Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. My name is Jane Nicholson, and I'm joined here today by my two co-hosts, Kristen Brown and Katelyn Belfontaine. Today on The Creative Hustle, we are going to be diving into when the customer is always right and when we should stand our ground. This is The Creative Hustle. Okay, guys. So I feel like I'm excited to talk about this because I feel like we've just learned so much over our years.
It's true.
I know. So, yes.
I feel like we're 70-year-old women sitting on this couch. We've all been through
Let
so much.
us bestow our wisdom on you.
Here we go.
Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about when the customer is always right and when we should stand our ground.
Right.
Because I feel like there's a fine line between those two things. So maybe, Kristen, do you want to take us into our first situation where we kind of battled this line?
Let's kind of preface it by saying that we are taught that the customer is always right. When you're working at Tim Hortons, when you're working, as a server at Smitty's.
Exactly. Any, all of our first jobs tend to be
customer's always right. You know, it's not
Definitely.
your fault, but you're working for somebody. It's reflecting on the business. What you're doing is reflecting on the business. But I think when you're a business owner, the customer, yes, is always right, but you also are cognizant of protecting your business. Whereas at other jobs, you're not. Does that make sense? In our first year of business at Aeronaut Productions, we weren't necessarily doing free work, but we were doing work for a heavily discounted price so that we could get promotional material and build up our portfolios. And that is something that we made very apparent on our contracts. So in our contracts, we'd say, this is the actual price, but here's the discount for this because we're going to use this for promotional material. So we did a wedding and it was great and lovely, and the couple is one of your couples.
Yeah, it was fun.
And the video turned out beautifully.
Yeah.
And what had happened was the customer came back and said that she's having privacy issues and people are seeing her video from, asking her about her video from her hometown because we had posted it to our social. We were using it for promotional material, and she asked that it be taken down. And Jane and I, of course, being the softies that we were at the time, we were a few months into our business and we just wanted to make everybody happy. But at the same time, we're okay, we're a new business. We did this video for hardly nothing. So we called Katelyn. I remember sitting in the garage area of our old office and being okay, we'll call Katelyn. And the businesswoman that she is, even though it was one of her couples who you've made really important and connections with and friendships, said, well, she signed the contract. A contract is a contract, and that was a huge learning lesson for us. So us, with our tail between our legs, went back to the client and said, we actually sent her the contract that she signed and says, please see the signed portion of this contract. It clearly states that we gave you this price at a discount for promotion to use your video as promotional material. But at the same time, we wanted to keep these relationships because we had so few wedding clients at the time. And as we always say in this podcast, word of mouth in Halifax is everything.
Yeah, you don't want to burn bridges.
We didn't want to burn the bridge. So what we did was we gave her some leeway and said, we'll take it off of social, but we'll keep it on our website. And then she came back and she wanted it off the website too. But we kept it there and she said, okay, well, I'll think about it.
Well, remember we were we'll take it off our website for $1,000.
Exactly. Which was the price,
the difference
on the contract. So I think in that situation, it was, the customer was right. In a sense that we made her feelings,
You heard her.
Yeah, we validated her feelings.
Yes.
That is so sad. We're so sorry to hear that. But your video happens to be one of our favorite videos, and the contract is the contract. You signed it, and we're running a business. But at the same time, she was right, but we're running a business.
So we kind of met her in the middle by taking it off social media, where most of the people from the hometown that she was from would be seeing it, but we still kept it on our website. So if someone,
for your portfolio.
If a potential client visited our website, it was still there.
But I think in that situation, we learned the importance of contracts, and we're constantly to this day building and adding to our contract. But we so learned the importance of being very clear about what you're giving people and what you want in return from the contract on both sides.
Yeah.
So that's something that you really need to be cognizant of when dealing with a customer like that. Customer is always right, but also at the same time, you're running a business.
I agree. And so my advice that I gave to you in that moment, even though this was years ago, had already come from myself experiencing things just like this. So we all started our businesses and we all started by using contracts. So go team. But one of the things in my early days is I didn't actually realize how valuable and how protected I was by my contracts. So in my early days, I was having, you go through things in your early days. You have slip ups, you have mess ups, you have clients that perhaps you shouldn't have even been working for in the first place. And then they see you as an easy target to take advantage of. And then easily you're taken advantage of. And multiple times, in year 1 and 2, even though I had a contract in place with a client, when they were coming at me with situations like that, like, please don't display our photos on your website, or you didn't fulfill your part of the contract, so we're now demanding a refund, or we don't want to continue working together, and now you owe us all the money back that we've paid you up until this point. I actually gave in. Like, I can't even tell you how many dollars I've refunded or how many e-transfers I've sent for mistakes that, were not really mine, but I was taking ownership of because I had that the customer is always right mentality. And it wasn't until I was speaking with another wedding planner who was from Toronto, who came from out of town, who used a very similar contract to myself, and also had business insurance. So I have business insurance, and I think most companies should at least consider business insurance. And we were kind of sharing stories similar to this. And she brought up her stories about, dealing with clients and customer complaints and requests for refunds and lawsuits and things that were even heavier than what I had dealt with. And you know what she told me? I asked her how she dealt with it, and she said, I just send them the contract and I send them the contact information for the insurance company and they deal with it. It's $500 deductible on the insurance premium and I'm out of the situation completely.
Wow.
And that was like a really big wake-up call to me, to realizing like how much weight those contracts carry and how protected we actually are by those. And what I used to think was like, this is a me problem. If I, without even knowing, I had the right processes in place in my business, that this actually wasn't. This was another person's problem, or the insurance company and the contract and the legal department's company to deal with, not myself.
Wow, maybe we should look into
Business insurance.
Yeah, I can share my contact with you because
Yeah.
I know they deal with all sorts of different creative businesses.
an instance where Kristen and I had that we were like, okay, the customer is right. We recently had a wedding not too long ago, actually, and so we did like our mini main feature for her, and then we finished the video with her and her husband's thank you speech, which we thought it was a great speech. But then she got it and she was like, I love my video so much, but just the ending, like I had a little, like some glasses of wine and I just like don't like the way I sound and that kind of thing. So a little tweak like that, she was just so sweet that something small like that, it wasn't a really big deal to us.
It was worth it. So I want to talk about client cancellations, because I think it's something that we've all dealt with, and I've talked to a lot of other creative entrepreneurs, and they always our hearts are just so attached to our businesses that when you deal with a client cancellation and you're being hired to plan a wedding for them, video a wedding for them, shoot a wedding for them, be their DJ, whatever that be, if the event gets called off, what do you do? So what do you guys have in your contract for a cancellation clause?
So within 90 days, if you cancel within 90 days, basically our date's gone. Like we can't really rebook that. So we require full payment. Now, if it's like before the 90 days, we just have that 25% deposit.
Right.
Which, I wonder if we should put our deposit up. If you think
To
of it,
50%.
well, if you think about it in the context of people canceling before the 90 days, and
Yeah.
frig.
I do mine in tiers. So I think, it changes depending on the contract. Some of them it's a 50% deposit, and then 25% is due 6 months out and 3 months out. So we're actually paid in full well in advance of the event, because at the end of the day, yes, a lot of, a portion of our service is execution on the event day, But a lot of what we're being paid for is the work that we're doing in advance of the day, but also we're selling the weekend, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you commit, you sign a contract with us for the August long weekend, which is one of the most popular dates in the summer season, and then unfortunately you call off the wedding or things have to be canceled or postponed, it really is going to depend on how soon in advance, how much notice we're getting. Because if it's a week before, there's no replacing that date. If it's a month before, 3 months before even, we're probably quite unlikely to be able to replace the date with another customer. So we've sold you that weekend, and it's been committed to you, and sadly, we still are owed our full amount.
And it kind of makes sense for you guys to be paid basically in full before, because then it would be so much less stress on the bride and groom because we've had an instance where like on the wedding day we weren't paid, but we knew they were going to pay us, but the groom was like, oh, I'll send it to you like right now. And it's like, oh, like don't worry about it. Don't stress about it on your wedding day. So it would be nice.
But the good thing about you guys is that you have your final delivery, right? So if you don't get paid, you're just not delivering over that video file. If I don't get paid and the day is come and gone, I can't go back and take that back.
Totally.
That's very true.
So how do you deal with client pushback, and if the customer is always right when a cancellation comes up?
Yeah, so honestly, this is all goes back to the contract. So as much as, we feel for our clients and we do want to have that customer first mentality, we have contracts for a reason. We're small businesses. If Tim Hortons has to do a refund of a donut and a coffee, that company, isn't going to see a significant loss. But for us to lose a contract that we were expecting to make in the summer season, that could significantly impact our bank account and the success of this business. So
have you ever given clients any leeway, or did you always stand your ground?
When it came to cancellations, I think I've always stood my ground. Now, we did have this season's been the season of cancellations. Previously, we had one wedding cancel, sadly, the week before the wedding, and all payments for all vendors were due in full. But we've had another 2 events cancel/postpone, and one of the clients did ask for a refund of their deposit, and we just said sadly no, that the deposit was placed so that we would reserve the date. We've turned away other bookings on that date. Should they decide to reschedule or have anything that they'd like to work with together in the future, I'd be happy to apply the deposit to that contract. But
That's what it is. You're running a business.
Do you have a lot of instances where it's like rescheduling?
Sometimes, yeah. Yep. So even again this summer, we were planning a wedding for November, and then the clients decided that getting married in the spring of 2020 would be more ideal for them. So just move the date and everything still applies. So
okay, well, that's good. So I feel like we're constantly learning about our contracts, and we're constantly growing and changing and trying to protect our businesses, like you said, that we hold so close to our heart. So Kristen and I had an instance, I think, was it our first year? Second year. Yep. So do you want to kind of walk us through that instance?
So we had just our contract that we were working with for, I think, like 2 years at that point. And the one thing I think we always get pushback on in our contracts is the model release section, because a lot of people don't want to share themselves crying or the most intimate moments on their wedding day on our website, on our social. So we had a client who the bride had signed off, because we have the client initial each term in our contract, and she signed off on each one. And then once we had the video and we put it up, the groom got cold feet of having the video out there, and we really stood our ground, because literally this was, I think, our best work that year. And we stood our ground and said, you signed it. Like, we were obviously very nice, and we felt for her and him and what they were going through. We understood, but it's one thing to take down a video that's not getting much traffic or you're not seeing inquiries come from, but then it's a video that when you are, it's like, okay, well, that's going to affect my bag. That's my bank account. So it was really hard. And then, we just came back in the nicest way possible and said, we're really sorry, you signed the contract. And then she came back to us with legal jargon. And at that point we were just like, okay, let's put this to bed. Like we were just so spent and done and emotionally exhausted from going back and forth with her.
And a little scared, frankly.
A little scared when somebody comes to you with legal jargon, you begin to question everything. And
you're like, how is my contract good? Like, am I going to get
Will
sued?
it hold up?
Exactly.
Exactly. So, but we also learned while standing our ground and then just giving up. And in the end, we learned to implement some things into our contracts.
Yeah. So now instead of just having the bride initial per term, now we have 2 spaces.
Brilliant.
So for both the bride and groom, they both have to initial by especially the model release. I don't know why I feel like it's always the model release that we get.
It's always the model release.
Because I think people are just like so private.
Exactly.
And that for this instance, the groom like didn't want his face all over the internet, which is understandable. But
Perfectly.
going into it, he should have also looked over the contract.
So was the customer right? No, she signed off on that model release. She's not right. We had every right to use that video for promotional material, but in standing our ground, we just gave up in the end.
I know, because sometimes you just like,
is it worth fighting?
Exactly.
It's personal, it's intimate.
Exactly.
You also want to put your heart into it and be human and,
Yeah,
Right.
and again,
Jane
you don't want to burn bridges.
Right.
She has 2 sisters,
And we were in the thick of wedding season, and we were constantly editing, and then in the back of our minds is just this issue that keeps popping up into our Facebook Messenger constantly. So we just put it to bed. But that's definitely an instance where the customer was not right and we were standing our ground, but in the end we made her feel like she was right.
Yeah.
Sweet couple, by the way.
Yeah. Super nice
It's
people.
just sometimes business is icky.
you have to go with your gut.
Yeah.
I think I always, when you're faced with a hard decision, if you just go with what your gut's telling you, then you might not see the benefit or, the reason for it right at the beginning, but looking back on it later, you guys can say like, we made him feel comfortable. We did what felt right by them. And, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
your integrity is
sometimes we have
worth
to
more.
swallow that pill of like, everything they're telling me is like, I don't agree with. But you have to think, like, especially in terms of wedding planning, when a bride's coming at you with, this has to be this way, this way, and this way. And here you are, like, 8 years in with full of experience.
Still her day.
But you still have to be like, okay. And I think all of our businesses.
Like when a bride comes in and tells me that video is stupid and she can't believe people would waste their money on that, I just have to sit there politely and nod along. Even though in my brain I'm like, no, you are so wrong. You will not regret video for 1 second. But we have to do what our customers want.
Sometimes we just have to bite our tongue.
We do. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for following along and listening. If you guys have any crazy when the customer is right, but you had to stand your ground stories, please send us a DM at the Creative Hustle Podcast on Instagram, because we would love to hear from you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, the Creative Hustle Podcast. And until next time, keep on hustling.